Hello and welcome to our show. Sorry we've been busy as of the month of July, so for August we will have 2 full episodes, so sit back and enjoy our creepy show. The Masked Menace, Spike's Shadow. In the small, quiet town of Hollow Creek, there was an unsettling legend that haunted the nights. The tale of Spike, a masked killer with a twisted sense of purpose. No one knew his true face, for he always wore a jagged, spiked metal mask that reflected the moonlight, giving him an almost demonic appearance. It all began on a stormy autumn night. The local teenagers decided to explore the abandoned mill on the outskirts of town, daring each other to venture inside. As they crept through the dark corridors, whispers of past tragedies echoed through the empty halls. Suddenly, a deafening clang echoed from upstairs, and the group froze. From the shadows emerged Spike. His movements were eerily silent, his masked face expressionless but menacing. He wielded a rusty, spiked bat, and his presence sent chills down everyone's spines. One by one, the teens tried to escape, but Spike was relentless, stalking through the darkness with calculated precision. The next morning, the town awoke to the horrifying discovery of their missing friends. No one saw Spike's face, only the glint of his mask. And somewhere, in the depths of the internet, the shadow watched and waited for the next victim. The end. The Howl in Blackwood Forest. Page 1. Deep within the shadowy depths of Blackwood Forest, legends whispered of a creature that was neither man nor beast, the Dogman. The townsfolk of Millbrook had long avoided the woods after sunset, telling stories of a tall, hulking figure with glowing eyes that prowled among the trees, its growls echoing through the night. But for Jake Carter, a skeptical teenager with a penchant for adventure, these tales were just stories to scare kids. One chilly autumn evening, Jake and his friends, Lisa and Mark, decided to test the legend. Armed with flashlights and a sense of bravado, they entered the forest just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air grew cold, and the wind whispered secrets through the leaves as they pressed on. Page 2. As they ventured deeper, the familiar sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls faded into an eerie silence. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl cut through the darkness. Jake froze, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Lisa nodded, her face pale. "Probably just a wolf or something," she said, trying to sound confident. But her voice quivered. Mark, trying to lighten the mood, joked, "Come on, guys. It's probably just the wind." Then, out of the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes appeared, staring directly at them from behind a thick cluster of trees. The eyes were bright, penetrating, and seemed to burn with an unnatural light. A massive figure emerged slowly, its silhouette tall and hunched, covered in matted fur. Page 3. The creature stepped into the moonlight, a hulking beast with features that defied explanation. Its face was a terrifying mix of canine and human, with a snout filled with sharp teeth and ears that constantly twitched. Its muscular body was covered in dark matted fur, and claws as long as knives scraped the ground with each step. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. "Run!" he shouted. But the creature let out a deafening howl that echoed through the forest, causing the ground to tremble. The friends sprinted back the way they came, branches scratching their faces and limbs. Behind them, the howling continued, growing louder and more aggressive. It was as if the creature was chasing them, hungry and relentless. Page 4. They burst out of the woods into the safety of the clearing near Jake's house. Gasping for breath, they looked back into the trees but saw nothing. The howling had stopped. For a moment, silence reigned, thick and oppressive. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. His mind replayed the horrifying encounter. Had they really seen the legendary Dogman? Or was it some twisted nightmare brought on by fear? He tried to dismiss it as a trick of the mind, but deep down, he knew better. The next morning, he decided to investigate. He returned to the edge of the forest, flashlight in hand, and began searching for any clues. As he moved among the trees, he found large, paw-shaped prints in the muddy ground. They were enormous, bigger than a man's hand, and they looked fresh. Page 5. He followed the prints, which led to an old, abandoned cabin deep within the woods. The cabin was decrepit, with broken windows and a roof that sagged with age. Curious and cautious, Jake stepped inside. Inside, he found strange symbols carved into the walls and scattered bones piled in the corner. The air was thick with the stench of decay. As he explored, he heard a faint growl behind him. Spinning around, he saw a pair of glowing eyes staring from the shadows. The creature from last night stepped into the light. But this time, it was different. Its fur was matted, and its eyes looked tired, but still fierce. It was not snarling or aggressive, but there was a sadness in its gaze. Page 6. Suddenly, the creature spoke, in a voice that was deep, gravelly, but surprisingly human. "Leave this place," it growled. "They hunt us here." Jake was stunned. "Who are you? What are you?" he asked, voice trembling. The creature hesitated, then said, "I am the last of the Dogmen, a guardian of these woods, cursed to exist between worlds. We are not monsters, but victims of a terrible curse. We protect the forest, but humans fear and hunt us." Despite his fear, Jake felt a strange compassion. "Why do you come out at night?" The creature's eyes darkened. "We are driven by hunger and desperation. We only want to live in peace, but humans bring destruction. We are misunderstood." Page 7. As the creature finished speaking, a group of hunters burst into the cabin, guns raised. They had been tracking the creature for weeks, believing it to be a dangerous beast. The creature backed away, growling softly. Jake stepped forward. "Wait, they're not monsters. They're victims just like us." The hunters hesitated, confused by Jake's words, but their leader, a grizzled man with a scarred face, shouted, "Get." Title: The Shadow in the Feed. Page 1. The friend request. Emma had always been cautious about her online presence. She kept her profile private, only accepting friend requests from people she knew in real life. But one evening, as she scrolled through her feed, she noticed an unfamiliar profile picture. An old black and white photo of a woman with piercing eyes staring directly at the camera. The account was newly created, with no mutual friends and only a few posts, mostly vague quotes and strange cryptic comments. One message caught her eye. "I see you." Emma chuckled nervously, dismissing it as a prank. But then, she received a friend request from that very profile. Her heart skipped a beat. She hesitated, then clicked accept, thinking it was harmless. After all, what was the worst that could happen? Page 2. The first signs. At first, Emma thought nothing of it. She continued her daily routine, posting selfies and updates. But over the next few days, she started noticing strange things. Her photos were being liked and commented on by the new friend, whose profile now had a name, Lena. The comments were unsettling. Short, cryptic messages like, "You can't hide," and "I watch from the shadows." Emma's friends said she was overreacting, but she felt a prickling sensation at the back of her neck. One night, she woke to her phone vibrating continuously. A message appeared. I know where you live." Her hands trembled. She looked outside her window. Nothing but darkness and silence. Page 3. The unseen presence. Emma decided to block Lena, but the account remained active, sending her messages from other fake profiles. Her friends urged her to report it to Facebook, but the messages kept coming, more sinister each time. Then, Emma began experiencing strange occurrences. Her lights flickered, her belongings moved, and she frequently heard footsteps when no one was home. She started feeling watched. One evening, while scrolling through her feed, she saw a new photo. Someone had taken a picture of her sleeping from outside her window. She froze, heart pounding, as she recognized the silhouette in the darkness. Her stalker. Page 4. The break-in. Emma's fear escalated. She installed security cameras, but the footage revealed nothing but shadows. One night, her doorbell rang. She peeked outside. No one was there, but a small, folded piece of paper was on her doormat. She picked it up and unfolded it. Inside was a single sentence: "You can't run." Her blood ran cold. Suddenly her phone buzzed. A message from Lena. "I'm inside." Emma's hands shook as she realized someone had broken into her house. She grabbed her phone, ready to call 911, but the line was dead. Page 5. The confrontation terrified. Emma barricaded herself in her bedroom. She called her neighbor, Mr. Garcia, who promised to come over. Minutes felt like hours as she hid behind her door, listening for any sound. Suddenly, her bedroom door creaked open. A figure emerged, a woman with Lena's profile picture, but her eyes were hollow, filled with malice. "Why are you running?" the figure whispered. Emma screamed, but her voice caught in her throat. The figure lunged toward her, but Emma managed to grab a nearby lamp and strike. The figure staggered back, disappearing into the shadows. Emma, trembling, called the police. When they arrived, the house was eerily silent. No sign of anyone. Page 6. The truth unveiled. The police investigated but found no trace of the intruder. Emma was advised to leave the house temporarily. The next day, her phone rang, an unknown number. "Did you think it was over?" a distorted voice said. Lena was just the beginning. Emma's friends convinced her to stay with family temporarily, but the messages continued, each more disturbing than the last. Her social media was flooded with images of her, taken from different angles, some from her own house. Page 7. The final revelation. One evening, Emma received a final message. "Look behind you." Heart pounding, she slowly turned around. Nothing, just her reflection in the mirror. But then she noticed it, a shadow lurking behind her in the glass. She spun around, but no one was there. Suddenly, her phone vibrated again. This time, a photo appeared, a picture of her sleeping, taken moments ago. It was snapped from inside her house. Emma realized her stalker had been inside her home all along, watching her every move, lurking in the shadows, feeding off her fear. Page 8. The escape and the aftermath. Terrified, Emma decided to leave everything behind. She packed her bags and moved to her sister's house out of town. She deleted her social media profiles, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Months later, she received a final message from a new profile. "You can't escape me." Emma knew that her stalker was always one step behind, lurking in the darkness of the digital world and the shadows of her life. Title: The Silent Harvest. Page 1. The Quiet Arrival. It was a cold, moonless night when the skies above the small town of Ravens Creek suddenly flickered with an unearthly glow. No one saw the craft land. It was as if the stars simply blinked out and then reappeared, closer and brighter than before. The townsfolk whispered about meteors or secret military tests, but none dared approach the strange metallic object that now sat silently in the abandoned field outside town. Among them was Dr. Elena Carter, an astrophysicist and part-time investigator for the local authorities. She had always been fascinated by the cosmos, but tonight her curiosity was tinged with a growing sense of unease. Something about that craft felt wrong, invasive even. Page 2, the first encounter. The next morning, Eleanor arrived at the site with her flashlight and a scanner. The air was unnervingly still. No birds or insects, just a faint hum emanating from the craft. As she approached, the hatch suddenly hissed open. Out stepped a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. Tall, gaunt, with elongated limbs and eyes that shimmered like black holes. Before she could react, the creature moved with unnatural speed, reaching out with a clawed hand. Elena froze, her heart pounding. But instead of attacking, the creature stared at her silently, as if studying her, weighing her worth. Suddenly, the creature emitted a low guttural sound, then turned and entered the craft, which sealed itself again with a whispering hiss. Eleanor's instincts told her she'd just encountered something dangerous, something deadly. Page 3. The disappearance. Over the next few days, strange things began happening. People vanished. Hikers, farmers, even a police officer. No signs of struggle, no bodies, just empty clothes and belongings left behind. Rumors spread like wildfire, but the authorities dismissed them as wild tales. Elena, however, grew more convinced that the alien craft was somehow linked. She returned to the site at night, determined to uncover the truth. As she approached, she saw faint lights flickering inside the craft, like eyes watching her. Suddenly, a burst of energy shot out, knocking her backward. Her radio crackled with static as a voice whispered in her mind, "You shouldn't be here." Page 4. The horrific truth. Elena managed to contact her colleague, Mark, a local sheriff. Together, they devised a plan to investigate further. That night, armed with sensors and weapons, they sneaked back to the ship. Inside, they found a chilling scene. Rows of pods, each containing a creature suspended in a gel-like substance. These weren't just alien visitors. They were harvesters, abducting creatures from Earth to feed or reproduce. Suddenly, the creature that Elena saw earlier emerged from the shadows, its eyes blazing with malevolent intelligence. It spoke in a voice that echoed in their minds. "We collect to survive. You are our next." Page 5. The killer unveiled. The alien advanced, revealing its true nature. It was a predator, a killer that thrived on draining life force from living beings. Its elongated claws glistened with a dark, viscous substance, the blood of its victims. Elena and Mark tried to escape, but the ship was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers. The creature pursued relentlessly, its silent footsteps echoing in the confined space. Elena managed to trigger an emergency shutdown, causing the ship to shudder and shake. As chaos ensued, the creature was thrown into a containment field, but Elena knew it wouldn't stay contained for long. Page 6. The escape and the final stand. With the ship on the verge of destruction, Elena and Mark raced to the exit. They burst outside just as the craft erupted in a fiery explosion, lighting up the night sky like a second sun. But the danger wasn't over. The creature, injured but alive, crawled from the wreckage, its eyes locked on Elena with deadly intent. It lunged at her, claws aimed for her. Title: The Shadow of the Laughing Clown. Page 1. The Whispering Town. In the quiet town of Ravensbrook, everyone knew everyone, and life moved at a gentle pace. But at night, strange whispers drifted through the air, especially near the abandoned carnival on the outskirts. No one dared to go near it, except for a curious teenager named Lily. She had always been drawn to mysteries, and the stories about the clown who haunted those grounds intrigued her the most. Page 2. The Legend of Jester. Jack, decades ago, there was a clown named Jester Jack who performed at the town's carnival. He was loved by children with his painted smile and playful tricks. But one summer night, something went terribly wrong. A fire broke out, and Jester Jack disappeared. Rumors spread that he had been caught in the flames, but others whispered he was never seen again. Some believed he had become something else, a vengeful spirit lurking in the shadows. Page 3. The First Encounter. One foggy evening, Lily wandered closer to the old carnival. As she pushed open the creaking gates, she felt a chill run down her spine. Inside, the rides were rusted, and the tents sagged with age. Suddenly, a faint giggle echoed. She turned and saw a clown figure in a tattered, stained costume with a face painted in a grotesque smile. His eyes gleamed unnaturally. It was Jester Jack. Page 4. The Clown's Warning. Lily froze as the clown approached slowly. Instead of the playful persona she expected, his voice was cold, hollow. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, his smile twisting into a menacing grin. "This is my domain now." Lily's heart pounded. She wanted to run, but her feet felt glued to the ground. The clown's eyes flickered with a dark hunger. Page 5. The Chase Through Shadows. Suddenly, the clown lunged forward, its laughter echoing like nails on a chalkboard. Lily sprinted through the maze of broken rides and tattered tents, the clown's haunting laughter ringing behind her. She darted past broken carousel horses and abandoned ticket booths, her breath ragged. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, as if the darkness itself was alive. Page 6. The Hidden Room. After what felt like hours, Lily found a small hidden door behind a pile of old crates. Inside, she discovered a dusty journal belonging to Jester Jack. As she read, she learned of a curse, how the clown had been trapped in a cycle of vengeance, feeding off fear. But the journal also held a secret. If she could confront him and break the curse, he might be freed. Page 7. Facing the Clown. Gathering her courage, Lily returned to the main tent. The clown was waiting, his face twisted in rage. "You think you can end me," he hissed. Lily remembered the journal's words. Only compassion can break the curse. She looked into his haunting eyes and spoke softly. "You're more than your pain. You can be free." Her words seemed to weaken him, his monstrous grin fading. Page 8. The Dawn of Peace. As dawn broke, the clown's form shimmered and dissolved into a cloud of dark smoke. The carnival was silent once more. Lily left the grounds, knowing she had freed the tormented soul. From that day on, the abandoned carnival remained untouched, a reminder of the night Lily faced the shadow of the laughing clown and triumphed. Title: Shadows of the Mind. Page 1. The Beginning of the Darkness. In the quiet town of Ravenswood, nestled between dense woods and fog-laden mornings, there was an unspoken fear lurking beneath the surface. No one dared to speak of it openly, but everyone knew the stories. Stories of a killer who stalked the night, leaving behind a trail of chaos and silence. His name was Ethan Drake, a man whose past was as mysterious as the shadows he concealed. Once a respected psychologist, Ethan's fascination with the human mind turned dark after a personal tragedy. His wife, Laura, had vanished without a trace, and Ethan's grief twisted into obsession. He began to see the cracks in reality, the thin line between sanity and madness blurring. Page 2. The First Victim. It was a cold October evening when the first body was discovered. Sarah Miller, a young woman with a bright smile and dreams ahead of her, was found in her apartment, her wrists slit and a cryptic message scrawled on the wall. "The mind is a maze." The police were baffled. No signs of forced entry, no motive apparent. Detective Lisa Monroe, known for her sharp instincts, was assigned to the case. She sensed that this was no ordinary murder. The meticulous nature of the scene suggested a mind deeply disturbed. As she examined the crime scene, she noticed a small fragment of a torn photograph, a piece of a face she couldn't quite recognize. Page 3. The psychological game. Meanwhile, Ethan watched from the shadows, his mind swirling with dark thoughts. He believed he was playing a game, a puzzle that only he could solve. He had chosen Sarah because she represented innocence lost, a reflection of his own shattered psyche. Ethan left subtle clues for the police, taunting them with riddles that hinted at his motives. His favorite was a quote from his own journals. "To understand the mind, you must first destroy the illusion of control." He thought himself a master manipulator, a puppeteer pulling strings in the shadows. Page 4. The chase intensifies. As the body count rose, fear gripped Ravenswood. Each victim was found with a similar message, and each death more elaborate than the last. Detective Monroe felt the pressure mounting. She knew Ethan was toying with her, her own mind becoming entangled in his web. One night, she received an anonymous call. A distorted voice whispered, "Look within." Monroe's heart pounded. She remembered Ethan's obsession with the mind's labyrinth and wondered if this was his way of challenging her. An invitation to confront the darkness within herself. Page 5. The confrontation following a lead. Monroe traced Ethan to an abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. Its walls, scarred by time and torment, echoed with memories of pain. She entered cautiously, her flashlight piercing the darkness. Suddenly, Ethan appeared from the shadows, his eyes hollow yet intense. "You're too late," he whispered. "The mind is a maze, detective, and I am the key." A tense standoff ensued. Ethan revealed that his wife's disappearance had fractured his mind, turning him into a mirror of his own chaos. His killings were a twisted attempt to understand and control his inner demons. Page 6. The psychological climax. Ethan's confession stirred a mixture of fear and pity in Monroe. She realized that Ethan was a victim of his trauma, a man lost in the labyrinth of his own psyche. But justice demanded action. In a desperate move, Ethan lunged, but Monroe managed to subdue him. As she handcuffed him, he whispered one final message. "The mind is a maze, and you're now a part of it." Page 7. The aftermath. Ethan was taken into custody, his mind forever scarred by the horrors he had unleashed. Ravenswood slowly returned to its quiet state, but the scars lingered. Detective Monroe resigned from the case, haunted by the depths of Ethan's madness and her own brush with it. In therapy, she often pondered the nature of evil, how it lurks within us all, sometimes hidden behind a mask of normalcy. Ethan's story became a cautionary tale about the fragile line between sanity and insanity. Page 8. Shadows never fade. Months later, a new message appeared on the town's bulletin board. "The maze never ends." No one knew who left it, but everyone felt the chill of its meaning. Ethan's darkness had not been fully extinguished. It was merely waiting in the shadows, ready to resurface. And in the deepest corners of the mind, the labyrinth continues, an eternal shadow of the killer who once stalked Ravenswood. The Last Dawn, a zombie tale. Page 1. The calm before the storm. In the quiet town of Willowbrook, Life moved at a gentle pace. Children played in the streets, farmers tended their fields, and everyone knew everyone else's name. It was the kind of place where you could leave your door unlocked and still feel safe. But that peaceful harmony was about to shatter. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, strange things began to happen. Animals in the farmyard barked and squealed at nothing, and a faint, unsettling fog crept into the town. No one paid much attention until a young girl named Lily noticed her pet dog, Max, acting strangely. Max's eyes were vacant, and he growled softly at her, baring his teeth. Page 2. The first signs of trouble. The next morning, Lily's father, Mr. Harris, went into town to buy supplies. He returned with a worried look on his face. "Lily, something's wrong," he said. "People are acting odd. Some are just wandering aimlessly, their eyes glazed over. It's like they're not themselves." As hours passed, the strange behavior spread. People began to stumble through the streets, groaning and clutching their heads. Rumors of bizarre outbreaks started circulating. A mysterious illness, some thought, or perhaps poison. But nothing seemed to make sense. That night, the town was on edge, and no one dared to sleep. The police set up barricades, but the chaos was already taking hold. Page 3. The transformation. By dawn, the nightmare had begun. Some townsfolk, bitten or scratched, showed signs of change. Their skin turned pale and mottled, their eyes sunken and black. They moved with jerky, unnatural motions, like puppets controlled by invisible strings. Lily's best friend Sarah was among those affected. She had been bitten during a scuffle with a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. Sarah's eyes now held a feral hunger, and her voice was no longer her own. Lily and her father, along with a handful of survivors, barricaded themselves inside the old town hall. Outside, the streets were filled with snarling, staggering figures, the first wave of what would soon be called zombies. Page 4. The fight for survival days turned into a week. Supplies dwindled, and hope grew faint. The survivors knew they had to escape or perish. Lily remembered her grandfather's stories of old, tales of courage and resilience. Inspired, she and a small group devised a daring plan to reach the nearby forest, where they believed safety lay. Sneaking past the zombies, they moved cautiously, hearts pounding. Every creak and groan made them freeze in terror. Just as they reached the edge of the woods, a zombie lunged at Lily. With quick reflexes, she managed to fend it off, but the scare reminded them how close death was. In the forest, they found refuge among the trees, away from the chaos. They knew they couldn't stay forever, but it was a start, a place to regroup and plan their next move. Page 5. A glimmer of hope. Weeks passed, and the survivors discovered that sunlight and fire seemed to weaken the zombies. They began to understand that the infection was spreading through bites and scratches. With this knowledge, they built traps and devised strategies to defend themselves. One day, they saw a convoy of military trucks approaching the outskirts of the forest. Hope surged within them. Perhaps help was coming. As the soldiers entered, Lily looked back at the ruined town of Willowbrook, the place she called home, and vowed to rebuild. Though the world had changed forever, Lily and her companions kept their spirits alive, knowing that even in the darkest dawns, there is a chance for new beginnings. The fight against the undead was far from over, but as long as hope flickered, humanity had a fighting chance. The shadow of Blackwood Forest. Many years ago, in a small, quiet village nestled at the edge of Blackwood Forest, there lived a young woman named Eliza. She was known for her curiosity and fearless spirit. often wandering near the woods, fascinated by its dark, twisting trees and the secrets they held. But the villagers warned her time and again, never go into the forest at night. The shadows there are alive. One chilly autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long, eerie shadows, Eliza heard a faint whisper calling her name. It was soft at first, like the rustling of dry leaves, but growing louder and more insistent. Unable to resist, she stepped into the woods, her lantern flickering in the cold night. As she ventured deeper, the trees seemed to close in around her, their branches like gnarled fingers reaching out. The whispers grew louder, turning into voices, mournful, sinister, and ancient. They spoke in a language she couldn't understand, but their tone was chilling, filled with longing and despair. Suddenly, the shadows shifted. Out of the darkness, strange figures emerged, twisted silhouettes that seemed to shimmer and flicker like candle flames. These were the whispering shadows, spirits of those who had entered the forest and never returned. They were trapped between worlds, their faces obscured but their eyes glowing with a ghostly light. Eliza froze as one shadow stepped forward. It was tall and thin, with a face that was a blank, shadowy void. It reached out a translucent hand beckoning her to follow. She tried to run, but the shadows were everywhere, clinging to her, whispering promises of secrets and power if she stayed. Then she remembered the villagers' stories, that the shadows feed on fear, twisting it into eternal darkness. Summoning her courage, Eliza shouted, "I will not be your prisoner," and turned back toward the edge of the forest. As she hurried, the shadows shrieked and flailed, trying to grab her. The whispers turned into screams, echoing in her mind like a nightmare. Just as she burst out of the woods into the safety of her village, the shadows retreated, vanishing into the darkness with a final chilling whisper, "We are always watching." From that day on, Eliza never entered the forest at night again. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, villagers say you can still hear faint whispers carried on the breeze and see shadowy figures lurking just beyond the trees, waiting for their next visitor. Title: The Whispering Shadows. Story begins. In the quiet town of Willowbrook, there was an old abandoned house at the edge of the woods. Locals called it the Shadow Manor, and everyone avoided it, especially after sunset. Legend had it that the house was cursed, haunted by the restless spirits of those who had disappeared within its decaying walls. One stormy night, a curious young woman named Emma decided to explore the house. Her friends warned her, but her fascination with the unknown was stronger. As she stepped inside, the air grew cold, and a faint whispering filled the darkness. The house seemed alive, breathing shadows that flickered along the crumbling walls. Emma's flashlight flickered, casting ghostly images in the gloom. She moved cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Suddenly she heard a soft voice whisper her name. But when she looked around, no one was there. The whispers grew louder, surrounding her with voices from the past, telling stories of betrayal, loss, and regret. Deeper into the house, Emma found a mirror covered in dust. As she wiped it clean, a shadowy figure appeared behind her reflection. Tall, faceless, with glowing eyes. She turned quickly, but the figure had vanished. Panic set in, and she tried to leave, but the door slammed shut on its own. The shadows crept closer, swirling around her like living smoke. Emma felt cold fingers grip her shoulders, pulling her into the darkness. Just as she thought she would be lost forever, she woke up outside the house, trembling and alone. It had all been a nightmare, or so she thought. But the next morning, Emma found a small black feather on her pillow, and a faint whisper in her mind echoing, "We see you, always watching." Thank you everyone for listening. We love you all until next time.